1.
I ain't afraid no more, I ain't afraid to say. And if the words are clear, I know that I will never. Busting out the rules, take my soul. Giving out the love makes me more. Busting out the fear to lose it all, I said more. Busting fair, busting fair, busting fair.
Excellent, Bobby.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Hi, I'm Dixie Karras, and I will be the only hostess tonight. And I have Tim Rice
Yes.
with me to interview tonight. And the first thing that we're going to be talking about is the medical industry. And if you want to call in tonight, the number is 360-693-7544. So you may have some interesting information to contribute to our show tonight.
Provocative.
Provocative.
And we want them to call tonight, don't we?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so the question is, give us an overview of the medical industry and what is happening right now. Especially, well, anyway, from your perspective, what is happening right now?
I can only go by what I know for a fact. And some of it I'm not sure is a fact or not. There's something going on between the medical offices, the pharmacies, and Medicare. And I can say this because at my age now I'm on Medicare. I might not look that old, but I am on Medicare. Recently I had a prescription for insulin that I've been taking for about 20 years. Normally the insulin, the N, Novolog, is about $24 to $48, depending upon where you buy the insulin. I won't mention names. I almost said a couple names. Keep them that. Take into consideration what they're charging Medicare. I'll show you one right here. I don't want to show names of these companies. N, Novolog, insulin. If you don't have insulin with diabetes, you might as well just kiss your butt goodbye. Now, here's what they charge Medicare. They charge me $6.60 for my copay, but that $24 to $48 insulin is $136.64. That's just the beginning. With insulin, you have to have test strips, don't you? Test strips used to average right around $50. There's 50 strips in each, so you can measure your blood, your glucose.
So that would be like 50 days.
50. Well,
No?
actually, no. You're supposed to take your blood glucose at least twice a day.
Okay.
They've got me on a test run right now, and I have to do it 5 times a day. So that $50 is good for about 10 days. Well, according to this receipt, these are receipts, folks. Call us in. I'm going to talk to you folks about this. Ultra One blue test strips. $212. This is what they charge Medicare for. I paid $6.25 for my copayment, plus the Medicare payment I make every single month.
Wow.
Is something not screwy?
Yes,
Now, I've been under the impression for years that when these pharmaceutical representatives come in and they want you to carry their product, at least for testing and so forth with your patients, so that your patient will get the product that they prescribe for you. Understand how that works? I've always been told that the doctors who are under these agreements, like with McNeil Pharmaceutical, and that's not who's making these, the doctor's office gets a percentage, gets a fee. I don't know if it's a referral fee or a commission fee, but they get a fee for every prescription they write with their brands that they supply in the store, and you go to the pharmacy and get it.
So it used to be a lot less expensive. I mean, you could have, okay, over the years, have you been able to see what Medicare pays for it and then your copay?
Only since Obamacare, I did say Obamacare. Call us in, folks. Get mad at me. But since January 1st of this year is when I've been noticing, because when I was under Kaiser, there was no copay. I had no copay whatsoever. But since this year started, the new red, white, and blue cards came out with Medicare patients. This is it. This is the first set of prescriptions I've gotten since I went on Medicare. And they chose the provider for me. I did not get to choose them.
Well, my feeling is that in a sense, corporations run our government.
Oh, yeah. When did you find that out?
Well, I figured it out. But so my curiosity is, how do we get, the government is in conflict within itself. But
No doubt.
how do we get them to realize that all of this charge of Medicare is, we're paying the taxes for the Medicare program, and basically our country's going to go broke if
We
it
are.
continues to be like this.
We're only $18 trillion in debt.
So I guess my question is, how do we get the people that are supposed to be our leaders to realize what is happening so that someone holds somebody accountable?
We, the people, have to stand up. I grew up in the 60s, my teenage years in the 60s, my college days in the 70s, and you know how we got the government's attention back then.
Yeah.
Yes, we're peace, love, and dove, all that good stuff, but we had to stand up.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate, back in the 70s at Kent State, our own National Guard went to Kent State with weapons and shot at the teenagers and shot 4 of them dead. That was our own people who did that to our own people.
Right.
So if you're thinking that the government is convoluted with all this nonsense and so forth, it didn't just start. And we need to stand up. Enough people have to stand up. I don't trust AARP. They're lobbyists. I don't know if they're owned by New York Life or which insurance company, but they won't stand up for us. Moms, dads, grandparents need to stand up. Anybody that's on a large amount of medication, whether it's fibro, meningitis, children with autism, for the parents, and the amount of money that they have to spend for medical care, and not food, not gas, and get low on their payments in their home, we the people need to stand up. And I've got a big mouth. I would be involved in a green grassroots group in a heartbeat.
Okay.
Especially with my good heart now that they've fixed it.
Well, and that maybe you could start a group.
I have thought about that. I do free diabetic counseling. I volunteer at a food bank every week. I belong to a think tank every week. I could probably make time, but I would need a lot of people nationally to get involved in this. I was involved in a youth group years ago, back in the 60s and 70s, that
Yes.
went national. So I know how to set this kind of stuff up.
Could you tell us about that group and what they were able to accomplish?
It was called the American League of Youth in Government. The exact purpose of the ALYG was to allow the high schools and community colleges to be a part of the legislative committees in the different states. And the long term, as we talked with Nixon about, and Governor Schwarzenegger in California in '72, things that we talked with them about was this is a good way to mentorship. This is a good way for these kids to decide if they want to get involved in politics or if they don't want to. I proved it myself because I went before the Oregon State Board a couple of times, Senate committees with Senator Blaine Whipple and others there, that I was testifying and being proactive on a few things that needed to be done and how the laws could be restructured or a completely new law, like the keg bill, for an example, in '77.
And explain that.
The keg, the Oregon State Liquor Board wanted to go after all the taverns and bars and the wholesale companies like Miletus, who distributes Budweiser. And the big force where the state was mad, Moms Against Drunk Drivers. They had the grassroots amount to start suing bars, taverns, and wholesalers for selling liquor. I mean, beer and wine. That was their main thrust. Well, I figured it out. Why would they want, if I'm going to sell a keg of beer to somebody, and their ID and everything is fine, why would they come after us? So I wrote 2 bills, SR 125, SR 126, went to Salem. We all had 10 minutes to talk. And when it came my turn to talk, and I was the 4th or 5th one called, I stood up and addressed Senator Whipple and said, I would prefer to be the last speaker. I may have nothing to say. And they granted that for me. So I listened to all the rants of everybody that was there, and there was a lot of people there. And it was my turn. Well, I was fired up. I actually had these 2 bills in writing. Today they're called the keg bills in the state of Oregon.
Okay.
And I presented my 10 minutes, which ended up, they allowed me 20 minutes because I had these handwritten bills, well, typed. And then they gave me about 15 minutes of just questions and asked me if I'd present the bills to them. Well, it was 2 months later, Blaine Whipple came to the tavern that I was managing while I was at Portland State, and to congratulate us and bring us the first pads of the new law registration forms. That forced everybody who bought a keg to actually put the address information that they live. But the next one was, where is the party? Every keg to this day has a SKU tag on it. And that conforms with the document that they would have to fill out. Well, I tell you, Mad Against Drunk Drivers, Moms Against Drunk Drivers is very mad at me, which I could care less, because it made the front page news. My dad was happy. But they still have that law to this day. And the first 6 months, there was a bust in Hillsboro, Oregon. 128 minors, 18 about age of all. And there was a school teacher that had it at a different location. And
Wow.
the cops had followed, they was all set up. They were following different cars. And he was the first example they made out of in the state of Oregon.
Okay, now the keg bill, but what does that do as far as, I mean, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, why were they mad at you?
Because the Senate went for my bills, 2 of them.
But what were the bills doing?
The purpose of the bill is to take the liability away from the wholesalers. They didn't want the people on the docks in the first place, but they had to sell it because it was legal. It took the liabilities away from any companies legally selling kegs of beer.
Okay.
All the liabilities were taken off us because of that form.
Okay, because it goes back to the people drinking the beer, and they're the ones that have the
The
accidents.
people who supplied the beer and invited minors to the function.
Oh, okay.
And the big part of it was, if you live on 119th in Vancouver, Washington, that party is on 94th in Hazeldale. That is the big violation right there. First is the minors, the second is a change of location, which is a falsification of the document SR 125.
Okay. But that's Washington, not
No,
Oregon.
that's Oregon.
But I'm
That's
just
an Oregon
saying,
bill.
it was an Oregon bill, but you were giving an example about.
I worked on a different bill in Washington State just a couple of years ago, the 502 initiative, 502. So I like to fight the government, especially when they're wrong.
Yeah.
You know, there's enough laws. Let's enact the laws and be upfront and honest with that law that's already on the books. Why have 10 laws on the same thing?
I agree. Okay, let's go back to the medical corporation,
No,
medical industry.
Shouldn't have got me sidetracked.
Unfortunately, I think they have so much power that they control, our government leaders.
They do, and they have since 1955 when the pharmaceutical industry and the Senate were fighting over patents. And that started the pharmaceutical industry having more say-so than before.
Okay.
It was over patent deals.
It's really about the fact that, part of it is about the fact that they make so much money that they have so much control. It goes back to the whole issue of greed and how greed controls what happens to us.
Well, then you've got to go one more step on that. When I was in the hospital with the heart surgery, I was looking at all these massive amount of bills. And I noticed that everything is itemized. You know what they charge for Tylenol? Not a 222, but a Tylenol.
I don't know.
$24 in the hospital. That's for one Tylenol.
Anyway, so I don't know. Yeah.
Are you avoiding that? It
I'm
doesn't
not,
sound like you.
I'm not avoiding it. It's just that I don't know what to do about it.
We need to rise up.
Okay. Well,
No.
here's our leader, Tim Rice.
As I have said, when I worked in Las Vegas and up here, I help discuss proper nutrition with diabetics.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, I could say honestly, 99% of all the people I've dealt with and worked with are senior citizens. There's not a one that cannot give me a horror story about the billing process, things that they can't understand and figure out why it's done this way, and why different rules and things change within the Social Security and the Medicare departments. And I have never heard of somebody very pleasant about their experiences, what it's costing. When my dad got out of the hospital 2 years before he passed away, my dad had a shoebox of meds.
So
That was nuts. But
what does that mean?
that means that it was costing my dad, what was it, $1,100 a month
Oh,
for his medications? Yeah, he had a Teamster's pension. He had a Social Security situation. The house was completely paid for, so it was 100% equity. But still, that
But there
had
are
to come
people
out.
that don't have that
Yeah.
advantage and still have to pay that kind of money.
Yes, indeed.
There was a question,
Call us in.
but I couldn't hear all of it, and so
Is someone talking to you?
okay. How does somebody get involved in about not fight, but get involved with opposition to this?
A very good friend of mine who passed 2 years ago, Rod Skibbinus. Rod, he had a Ventrodol basal from the Howdy Doody show and was Wriggling Brothers. Each time I go and visit him in the home, we'd meet in the cafeteria, and there'd be several dozen people, and they'd all be, I'll use the word kvetching. It's better than saying bitching. They would be kvetching about the bills.
Now this is in a senior center.
Senior center,
Okay.
retirement community.
Okay.
And it seemed to be, and my sister Ellen, before she passed, was in a rehab center from a stroke she had. It's the same story. The same complaints at the tables, about the Medicare and how much it costs them for all these different things that will keep them alive a little bit longer. There's Dixie,
I'm
there's got to be
laughing
thousands.
because it's so depressing.
It is. But we can do something. It just takes people with chutzpah. I'll use the word chutzpah instead of the
Okay.
other word. It's people with the chutzpah who will stand up and not afraid of talking to groups. That's all it is.
Well, I know. I went to college in the '60s, so I
You know what I'm talking
I
about.
know what you're talking about.
It's a crime.
Yes, it is.
If we did the same thing, if we're in business, and I know people will pay for luxury things, they can afford it. But if your business is deceptive, you could be sued. You could be arrested. And they're going to take their word because there's enough investigative research done with a prosecutor and so forth like that. You can be turned around and you could be sued. And, then it's up to you or up to them for the burden of proof, if they've got enough on you.
But the problem is that it costs you money to have a lawyer to take care of it.
I knew you'd say that. It's true.
So,
It's not to any of our benefit. That's the sad thing about it.
yes.
And I wonder sometimes how many people died from complications of improper medication.
Oh, I think a lot.
If my dad had a shoebox of meds. When I had the bypass, I had 14 medications. But fortunately, with a nutritional background, and I had a good cardiologist with a big understanding of nutrition, he let me, if I found something that I thought would work better than Lysic, for an example, because it didn't take the swelling downs after a month, I found a natural product that would, and he asked me to bring the labels in. And he says, Tim, I don't think you need this medication anymore. So I just dwindled down. I take a half of a statin and a Lisinopril, which I have no idea why I'm on that. My blood pressure the other day at the doctor was 127/30. Does that sound like I've got high blood pressure?
No, it almost sounds like you have low blood pressure.
Yeah, I get
30?
along good, though. Yeah.
My goodness.
But I don't have that shoebox anymore,
Right.
and I couldn't afford it if I did have that.
That's
But
true.
it's all against us. We need to stand up.
Well, and I read something the other day. This lady wrote and said that she felt like things were hopeless, but somebody sent something to her which was that sometimes things have to become so bad
Yes.
that people rise up and say, that's it, we cannot do this any longer.
And our Constitution gives us that privilege, for
Yes.
now at least.
Yes.
I mean, we do have a constitutional president.
Well, anyway, that's the positive part of what I read was, and I do understand this, sometimes things have to go in such a negative direction that people cannot take it any longer. They can't stand it any longer. And so that's what, in a sense, revolutions are all about.
Yeah,
But
they are.
we could have not a revolution with guns, but a revolution of, we're not going to stand for this any longer.
Well, we did have guns in the 60s and 70s, unless you were someone like Bill Ayers and the Weatherman, stuff like that. But I was talking to a couple of our diabetic friends that I've known from the food pantry that I volunteer at. And, well, if we do a grassroots, we've got to have a nonprofit organization. And then the government's going to want to know what the nonprofit group is, and they'll censor you, and the IRS will do all these. They're scared of this because of what happened at the last election, where these church groups and other organizations for nonprofit status, they must have had some wrong keywords, if you will, in their proclamation and their articles of incorporation and so forth. And some of these people are still scared of, well, I can't join because I'm afraid, we're going to have this problem with the IRS.
So it's fear.
It is fear. It's sad.
Well, but let's put it from the opposite direction. Let's say that we want to work together to make things a whole lot better for everybody. And maybe enough people would be able to work together to change things. I mean, it's happened before.
Why don't you give them that phone number and see if they'll
Yes.
start calling in and find out how to get this thing rolling.
Okay, 360-693-7544.
Exactly. It's all it takes is people of the same concern. It doesn't have to be that 80-year-old grandmother. It could be her grandkids that are going, I'm fed up. Grandma's having to do all this and take all this medicine and all this. That's where it can start. Just
Yes.
people who have a loving heart
Yes.
and that care about other people to get something like this steamrolling. We are in about the election year now. I would love to be able to have a group stand up and say, hey, Ted Cruz, you're in town. We need to talk. Or Hillary, you're in town. Do you have enough time for us?
Well, and they need to hear that people, let's see, how would I say this? That people have had it up to here that we really need to work together. And it's to get to that point where we're not opposing each other, but to work together. I mean, that's the way the Congress used to work together.
When? Before 1913 with Woodrow Wilson?
Well,
And
I
the-
thought
and the
that they had
feds.
some compromise before now, but that's from my perspective. Anyway, so yeah, I believe that, it's people coming together and working together that will make changes.
Right now, because I'm a bit of a rebel, right now is the perfect time. All these politicians are going to be roaming throughout the country.
Yes.
There's a lot of news shows that have, you go Twitter, no, that's keyboard, email, Twitters, all these different ways of getting a hold of these people. And if there's enough people with the right type of chutzpah, be it nice and so forth, not nasty, foul words, we can get the attention. If Hillary is in town at the Crystal Ballroom and they take any questions or so forth, that's perfect timing. In '68, when Nixon was running for president, I was on the school staff and I was a reporter. Well, I wanted to get something from him directly. So I actually, I didn't get stopped either. I actually met them at the limousine. I was told I had to remove myself, but Mr. Nixon said, no, this young man's from the school. Let us chat for a few minutes. I addressed him as Mr. President. It was only a primary. In fact, he won that primary 4 days later. Sometimes you have to assert yourself in a position to be right where you need to be for that politician, that
Yeah,
person
that's
looking
true.
to be your senator, your congressman, and so forth. And I've done this, so I know it can be done.
Yes, I agree with you. And by the way, we're about to wrap up the show. So I just think that, it's important for us to encourage people
Oh, yes.
to stand up and say, we can't afford to pay for this any longer. Our country's going to go broke. It's probably already broke in a sense if we keep doing this. So anyway, that's the way I look at it. So anything you'd like to end with?
Which camera are we on? This one right here, number 4? The last thing I want to say, and I'm not sure where I need to look, folks, we all know our family members and aunties and uncles that are not financially available to pay the charges that we're having to pay for medications. Anytime you've got to pay $128, $138 for insulin if you don't have coverage, that's out of control. If you want to take charge and get back to the way things should be, you need to get a hold of us here at the station by email or by phone, and let's talk.
Sounds like a really good plan. Anyway, so I want to thank everybody for watching, and I'd like to thank you, Tim, for joining in and having this very important discussion
And I
tonight.
could talk about this for hours, so I'm glad it's limited time.
Okay. All right.
I ain't afraid no more, I ain't afraid today. I ain't afraid of words I just want to say. Busting out the rules that they control, busting out the love from my soul, busting out a love that won't be so I can't hold. Busting fear, busting fear, busting fear.
Hi, and welcome to Brood, your local cafe and pub. Offering you a variety of services, we have beer, coffee, wine, and food. You can find us on Facebook at Brood360 and online at broodcafepub.com.